Let's talk about running backs that you should start or sit in week 10 of the fantasy football season. We've got a lot of teams on bye: the Browns, Packers, Raiders, Seahawks, which means you will have no Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Mattison, Ken Walker. But don't worry, in today's video, I'm going to help you set those lineups. We'll go through every matchup, 28 teams, 14 matchups in total, starting with Thursday night football. We've got the Bengals at the Ravens. Now, what you have to know throughout this entire video, when I look at points allowed, we are looking at the last 4 weeks of the NFL season because it feels like the most relevant as far as what these defenses' form looks like. So when you look at points allowed, for example, the Bengals are 26, so they're a tough matchup in the last 4 weeks, whereas the Ravens have actually been starting to give up some points on the ground to running backs. They're the 12th best matchup for your running back in the last 4 weeks. And honestly, this game is very, very simple on Thursday night. Should be a very exciting one. It's the highest over-under of the week. We should see a ton of fantasy points. I definitely want to start my running backs in this one. The Ravens are favored by 6.5 points. Chase Brown, a must start. My RB18, yes, top 20 play this week. Zach Moss is out indefinitely with a neck injury. Now, the last time I can personally remember a running back being out indefinitely with a neck injury, and I don't wish this on Zach Moss, was Chris Carson. Neck injuries are really tough to come back for your running back, so Chase Brown could actually turn into that league winner we all thought he could be. Chase Brown, his first game without Zach Moss, he had 27 carries, 120 yards, he had 37 receiving yards, 5 receptions, he had a touchdown. His previous career high in touches was 17 touches. He had almost 27 PPR points. This guy's going to become a must start each and every week, and we're doing it even in a matchup against a tough Baltimore defense.
So right after I finish recording this video, the Bengals make a trade for Khalil Herbert. Now, look, this doesn't really affect this week that much at all. This is more of an indication of Zach Moss's injury being very, very serious. Like we talked about last time, we remember this type of injury. It was Chris Carson. So this is a bad sign for Zach Moss. He's probably droppable in every format. And what I will say is Khalil Herbert is definitely a name I want to pick up off the waiver wire this week. He's probably the only running back that's available out there that could have real interest. Again, it's a short week. He's probably going to have no impact on the game. It doesn't change the way I rank Zach Moss, but definitely someone I want to roster moving forward.
And on the opposite side, of course, you're going to start the King, Derrick Henry. He is the RB1 overall in fantasy. He's actually the second highest scoring player in fantasy football. Guess who's number one? Lamar Jackson. That's right. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are both number 1 and number 2 overall in scoring in fantasy football. You got to start those guys. And by the way, before we move on, Keaton Mitchell is probably going to make his debut this year in this game, so I think he's worth stashing personally. All right, the second game we'll look at, we're going to Deutschland, Germany. I believe this game starts at 9:30 a.m., so make sure you set your lineups early this week. We've got Giants at Panthers for the Germany game, 41.5 point over under. The Giants are favored by 4.5 points. 2 basement dwellers. Funnily enough, if you guys know Badaki on our channel, he's a Giants fan, and his stance is, I want to lose this game because now Giants fans and Panther fans are thinking about the NFL draft. But anyway, Tyrone Tracy is the definition of a must start in this game. He is a top 16 running back for me here in week number 10. The Panthers give up the most points over the last 4 weeks to fantasy running backs, and Tyrone has completely taken over this backfield. Last week, he had 72% of the snaps. He had 17 touches. The week before that, he had 23 touches. Even with Devin Singletary back, it's his backfield, and he's going to shine in a very good matchup against the Panthers. On the opposite side of the ball, Chuba Hubbard, look, he's no longer a must start for me if Jonathan Brooks makes his debut, and all signs are pointing towards that happening. In fact, last week we heard Jonathan Brooks is likely to make his debut in Germany. So I don't know what Jonathan Brooks' usage is going to look like in this first game. They could slowly work him in. But regardless, if there is another running back taking opportunities away from Chuba, he no longer becomes a must start. He is now a spot start. Still a top 27 play. It's a middle of the pack matchup versus the Giants, so you can definitely put him in there if you have a bunch of players on bye. But just be aware that soon Jonathan Brooks is really going to eat into his workload. You should have sold Chuba quite a few weeks ago. All right. This brings us to the start of the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slate of games. Patriots at Bears, 38.5 point over under, which is the second lowest over under of the week, which means we shouldn't expect a lot of fantasy points in this one. The Bears are favored by 6.5 points. They're huge, huge favorites. Ramondre Stevenson is a spot start. Now, he has had a touchdown in the last 2 games. He had 2 touchdowns in week 8 versus the Jets. He had 1 touchdown versus the Titans in week 9. And really, those touchdowns are kind of saving his day right now. If you look at his efficiency, he has been really inefficient recently. Versus Tennessee, he averaged 1.6 yards per carry on 10 carries. Versus the Jets in week 8, he averaged 2.4 yards per carry on 20 attempts. And versus Jacksonville, one of the best matchups in fantasy, by the way, he averaged 2.5 yards per carry against the Jags. I mean, right now, it's kind of touchdown or bust. If you literally look at every game Ramondre Stevenson has played so far this year, if he gets a touchdown, he has a great week. If he doesn't, he completely busts. Game without a touchdown, a 0-point game, an 8-point game, a 4-point game, and then all the other games with a touchdown over 16 points. So if you can predict a touchdown, start him with confidence. I can't, especially against a Bears team who is the second worst matchup against running backs in the last 4 weeks. You can play him because I know there's a ton of injuries and buys, but really got to limit your expectations this week. All right, DeAndre Swift is a must start in this matchup. The Patriots are the second best matchup for your running back in the last 4 weeks. He's dominating touches. He's getting targets through the air. He's dominating on the ground. Before last week, he had a touchdown in 4 straight games. We're going to keep playing him even in good matchups, right? All right, Bills at Colts, 47.5-point over-under. That's a heavy over-under. You know, we should see a lot of scoring opportunities for these running backs, and this is very clear for me. Jonathan Taylor, you're going to start Jonathan Taylor each and every week. It was really strange last week the way they didn't feed Jonathan Taylor, but to be fair, Minnesota is one of the most difficult rushing defenses in the NFL. What was encouraging to see is with Joe Flacco, Jonathan Taylor had 5 targets, which is a season high. Why is that important? Because think about it. When Anthony Richardson is playing, if he's in trouble, he's going to rush the ball. He's not going to dump it off. When Flacco is playing, he's more likely to dump the ball off. So don't be surprised if Johnny gets way more involved in the air. And then James Cook, it's a top 7 matchup against running backs for the Colts. So you're definitely going to continue to play him. He has been very good so far this year in a good offense. All right. Vikings at Jaguars. Yes. You guys got me in my head now. Jaguars. All right, whatever, okay? 46.5-point over-under. The Vikings are favored by 4.5 points. You start Aaron Jones with confidence. He's been very, very good this year. You know, has had a couple down weeks, but he's still been heavily involved in the game plan. In week 8, he had 22 touches. In week 9, he had 25 touches. He just hasn't gotten to the end zone recently and hasn't been really in a good matchup as of recently. So I do think he's going to be much, much better in this game versus the Jags. Top 5 matchup for your running backs. And then on the other side, this is what we've been predicting. If you've been on this channel, we really felt like when Etienne was back, it would be absolute hell for this backfield. The reality is they still like Etienne. They're still going to use Etienne. Etienne will still be their pass catching back. They will split opportunities between Etienne and Bigsby. And that's exactly what we saw here in week 9. And I think that's going to continue. It's a top 10 matchup against the Vikings in the last 4 weeks. But honestly, I don't want to start either of these guys because they're going to split opportunities. It's very likely that this team is down and they're not able to establish the run, which makes Bigsby a really tough start to project. And then with Etienne, they're also starting to play Dearness Johnson. It's so confusing. Etienne had 3 carries, 3 targets. Bigsby had 8 carries, but he finished with 2 points. I mean, I just don't know how you start any of these names, but of course, I know a lot of people are dealing with injuries and buys. So sometimes you got to throw up a Hail Mary. That's what these guys are this week. All right. Broncos at Chiefs. Chiefs get away with the overtime victory. It was so funny seeing Baker Mayfield's face when they lost the coin toss. Baker knew. He just knew straight away. Oh, Chiefs are going to win this. Okay. 41.5-point over under. It's an AFC West showdown. The Chiefs are the largest favorites of the week in this game by 9.5 points. The Broncos are the biggest underdogs of the week. Honestly, I don't think that's fair. I think the Broncos are a much better team, and the Chiefs aren't blowing anyone out. Their offense isn't, some well-oiled machine. I think that line is a little too far, personally, even as someone who supports the Chiefs. But, all right, this one's very simple. Kareem Hunt is someone that you can absolutely start. I mean, Kareem Hunt just had a game where he got into the end zone. Yes, it was in overtime, but he also had 27 carries, 108 yards. You got to keep starting Kareem Hunt. Anytime they're inside the 10-yard line, the 5-yard line, he's going to get plenty of opportunities to score a touchdown. And until Isaiah Pacheco comes back, he's a must-start. Broncos are middle of the pack. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, I'm not sure you're really going to be excited to start any of these names. Javonte Williams, I guess, is the one that you can play, but the Chiefs are giving up the fewest points to running backs over the last 4 weeks. And let's be real, even in good matchups, Javonte Williams has busted before. Versus Carolina, the best matchup you could even think of, he had under 10 fantasy points, averaged 2.5 yards per carry. Now they want to get Audric Estime involved. Audric Estime just had a season high, a career high in snap share, 10%. What if that goes up to 15 or 20%? And Jaleel McLaughlin's still taking targets away. So look, it's a bad matchup. It's a running back who is now sharing the backfield 3 ways soon is what we're projecting. I just don't know if you really are going to get excited about that one. All right. From the AFC West to the NFC South, Falcons at Saints. 46.5 point over under. That's a very healthy line. We should see a lot of fantasy points in this one. And the Falcons are favored by 3 points. Bijan Robinson, a must start. He has turned into everything we ever wished he could be. In the last 4 weeks, he has scored over 21 PPR points, and he is starting to dominate touches. I know there was a lot of people out there who were worried about Tyler Allgeier's role. The reality is Tyler Allgeier, they're going to use him, but in games where they're competitive, it's still going to be Bijan Robinson regardless, is what I'm trying to say, right? If you look at the last, 4 weeks, you can see Bijan is averaging 22.8 touches per game. Allgeier is more around that 11 touch per game number. So look, I understand the concern around Tyler Allgeier, but Bijan Robinson looks like exactly what you drafted him to be. And now he faces the Saints, who are the 3rd best matchup for running backs in the past 4 weeks. Smash start. On the opposite side of the ball, bye-bye. See you, Dennis Allen. I mean, is there anybody in the fantasy community who liked Dennis Allen? I don't know how anyone would be sad about this. I don't even think Saints fans are sad about this. They're probably happy. But Alvin Kamara, of course, you're going to start Alvin Kamara. I don't need to tell you that. With no Chris Olave potentially, with no Kendre Miller, with no Jamal Williams, I mean, they're going to run this kid into the ground. All right, Niners at Bucs. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. We got him. And when I say him, I mean Himothy, meaning Christian McCaffrey. He is practicing in week 10, and there's a very good chance that he plays. By the time you're watching this, if it's later in the week, you might know if he's playing or not. If he's playing, I am not going to play scared football here, scared fantasy. We're putting him straight into our lineups. If he's healthy enough to go, he's going straight into those lineups. My RB7 on the week, if he is healthy, I just don't believe they're going to put him out there to, see if he's healthy or not. They've already held him out for how long? Why would they wait this long and then put him out there if he's not healthy? So I think he's the dude straight away, and you play him if he's out there. Now, if CMC is ruled out, Jordan Mason becomes a top 16 play for me at the running back position, a must start. And if CMC and Jordan Mason are both out, I think Isaac Herendo also becomes a must start, but more of a top 24 name this week. And by the way, the Bucs are a top 6 matchup for your running backs recently. It's a great matchup for CMC to come back. On the opposite side, I still think Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are both really strong starts. Unfortunately for Bucky Irving, he didn't really get the work that we wanted to see for him in this game versus Kansas City. I'm a little bit confused why they didn't use him more, but he still got 10 touches. He's been very efficient. They're really kind of funneling the offense through these running backs. I still think he's a really decent start on a week-to-week basis. Same with Rachaad White. All right, we are going to move on here to the Steelers at the Commanders. Guys, the Commanders are favored, and they're facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. That does not sound like something I would say this year, but it's true. They're 2.5 point favorites. It's a 46.5 point over under. So we should see a lot of fantasy points in this one. Don't be surprised if we see a huge game from both sides. Now, Najee Harris has been on a great form recently. In the past 3 games, he has scored 16 or more PPR points. He's had over 100 rushing yards in all of the last 3 games. With Russell Wilson, this offense is just better. And also, don't forget about Jaylen Warren. He's a fine spot start. I think his role will continue to grow. He's had 12 touches in week 8, and the week before that, he had 15. He'll get his shot. He'll get into the end zone one of these weeks. He's a fine spot start for desperate teams. And then on the opposite side of the ball, Brian Robinson was inactive with the hamstring, but if he is healthy, there's really not a matchup I'm going to sit Brian Robinson. And in the past 4 weeks, the Steelers have been one of the better matchups for your running backs. So absolutely in play for me here in week number 10. And of course, look, if Brian Robinson can't play, Austin Eckler would become, a top 24 start again. I mean, he was really good last week without Austin Eckler. He had, 15 touches. He got into the end zone. He was used in the air, on the ground, over 17 PPR points. So if Brian Robinson is out, you can definitely play Austin Eckler with confidence. All right, that brings us along to the start of the 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slate of games. 37.5 point over under. This is the lowest over under of the week. So according to sportsbooks, there should not be a lot of fantasy points from this one. The Chargers are 7.5 point favorites. That's the second largest spread of the week. The Titans are huge underdogs in this one. But here's the good news. We talked about the Broncos matchup and how it was confusing because so many running backs are getting touches. The good news about this matchup is even though it's a low over-under, we have 2 running backs who are dominating touches in their backfield. Tony Pollard, my RB22. J.K. Dobbins, my RB23. Both top 24 plays this week. Not really an ideal game or outlook, but again, these guys are dominating touches. Tony Pollard, here's his touch count in the last 3 weeks. 31, 24, 22. Okay, how about J.K. Dobbins? Well, last week he had 16. The week before that, he had 24, if I'm not mistaken. So these are 2 guys who are just absolutely dominating their backfields, and purely based off of volume, you can start them. All right, the 11th matchup we'll look at here is Jets at Cardinals, 45.5 point over under. The Jets are favored by 1.5 points. Okay, Breece Hall, RB11, gotta start him. I know it's been annoying, guys. I know the last couple weeks have been really bad. In fact, he's only really had 2 good weeks since week 4. Since week 4, he's had 4 bad games and 2 good games. But the reality is the touches are still there on an offense that is continually improving. If you look at touches per game since week 6, Breece is averaging over 20 touches, almost 21 per game, and Braylon is down at 6. Clear definition, defined roles for Braylon Allen. He is not going to take Breece's job. He's the definition of a spellback, but we're all worried about him because of what he did to begin the season. So I still think you got to start him. It's a top 13 matchup for running backs against the Cardinals. And then on the opposite side, James Conner, he's staying healthy. He's looking great. He had 21 total touches last week. The week before that, 23. The week before that, 23 again. He's the definition of a workhorse. He's been a great pick in fantasy this year. And you can start him in a middle of the pack matchup against the Jets. Remember, just last week on Thursday Night Football, Joe Mixon was going bananas against this defense. All right, moving on. We've got an NFC East battle here. Saquon Barkley and the Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. And this one is very, very simple. Keep in mind, Dak Prescott is going to be out for a little while, so the offense in Dallas is going to be a little bit stifled, in my opinion. So Rico Dowdle, he was really great last week. He's playing over 70% of the snaps, getting so many touches, has multiple receiving touchdowns this year. But because Dak is going to be out, and because the Eagles in the last 4 weeks are the 3rd worst matchup for running backs, I would really, really lower your expectations for Rico Dowdle this week. There's no real air attack without Dak that's going to make defenses not stack the box against a Rico Dowdle. So I'd be very, very cautious playing him. But again, I do know there's so many buys and so many injuries out there. And then, of course, you're going to start Saquon Barkley. Look, we all know how good the kid is. All right? We don't need to talk about that. And he's not a kid, he's a veteran. All right, moving on to Sunday Night Football. We have the Lions at the Texans. And what a game we have for the running back position in fantasy football. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Joe Mixon. 3 guys that could score over 20 fantasy points on any given week. Joe Mixon has been on an absolute tear on a points per game basis. He's one of the best running backs in fantasy football this year. It is technically a bad matchup for both sides. The Lions are 27th in points allowed, so they're a tough matchup. And the Texans are 25th. They're not giving up many points to the position in the last 4 weeks, but ultimately 3rd highest over-under of the week. 2 offenses that can really move the ball down the field. The Lions lost one of their best defensive players, their best defensive player in Aiden Hutchinson, which definitely helps other teams run the ball on them. Jahmyr Gibbs, my RB10, Monty, my RB15, Mixon, my RB4. All guys are absolute must-starts, getting enough work to carry your fantasy week to a win each and every week, regardless of matchup. And man, Joe Mixon, so fun to watch. So fun to watch. Not if you don't have him, though. All right, last game of the week is Monday Night Football. We've got Dolphins at Rams, 50.5 point over under. I believe the fantasy gods are blessing us with another Monday Night Football game that will determine a lot of matchups. A lot of Monday Night Football players are going to determine your win or loss this week. Second highest over under the week. The Rams are favored by 2.5 points. It's a close spread, and you've got two clear RBs that are must starts each and every week. Devon Achane, my RB3 on the week, and Kyren Williams, my RB6 on the week. Two defenses that are not, I guess, matchups that we're really targeting right now, but again, two absolute superstars in the fantasy space. I actually just traded for Kyren Williams in my home league. We're 5-4 in that league, and we've got a stacked roster. So really happy to get him in my team. This is the first week I'll be able to watch him and cheer for him in my home league. I think this will be a great game, guys. I'm so excited that we get to end the week with an absolute perler like Dolphins Rams. And Devon Achane, man, he's been just so good. I mean, he's leading this team in receiving yards pretty much every time Tua is playing. It's crazy that they're not using their wide receivers, but Achane is absolutely thriving. Two guys that you've got to start. Hey, maybe you have a start-sit question that you're struggling with this week. Check out the pinned comment down below in the comment section. You can ask me a question at any time through the Flock Fantasy site with that link. And also, if you don't have a free account on Flock Fantasy just yet, I gotta advise you to go do so. It's completely free. flockfantasy.com/land. When you use our promo code LAND at sign up, you'll get the My Team feature, the expert consensus rankings, the trade calculator, all for free just by signing up with our promo code. I appreciate y'all for watching this video. Good luck this week. Wide receiver video will be out later in the day. And we'll see you guys then. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.